everyone. Welcome to this new episode of the Swift Academy podcast. Today, I'm very happy to be with Mihaela. She is a senior iOS developer who came from Croatia and from Zagreb. And she has a lot of experience about the Apple environment, a lot of experience with a lot of company, especially in Croatia. And hopefully I will speak about MCP server, how to create an MCP server, which is the Cupertino MCP server, which is a homemade MCP server, which is a fantastic MCP server because everything is homemade by Mihaela, and that's why I decided to invite him to this episode. I hope that it will be a great episode with Mihaela. Hello, Mihaela, and how are you?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you for inviting me. It's always a great opportunity to talk about Cupertino because it's a real fun project for me.
Yes, and before speaking about Cupertino, maybe a little presentation about you, about your career, how you are interested into this world of AI, especially related to iOS development and Swift development.
Yeah, well, I started my iOS career in 2014. It was Objective-C. Arc just came up, and then progressed to Swift and all the changes when it comes to functional additions and everything. And I stumbled upon AI, I guess 3 years ago, as everyone. We were shocked by ChatGPT, but I really settled on Claude. And my problem was working with Claude, I couldn't rely on it. It was much better for JavaScript, for Python, because there are so much more examples. But when it comes to Apple, it would very often it would hallucinate, and I just couldn't rely on it. So I started by downloading the documentation and telling Claude to go through all of it. And then I realized that's silly. And then I started developing the MCP, and then it helped me a lot. I just instruct Claude, anything Apple related, always ask Cupertino. And that's how I'm able to build my apps and rely on Claude because of Cupertino and still have my signature architecture that I now use.
Yes, it's great. It's the purpose that you come from real life purpose, because we know that every LLMs have this kind of hallucination and also the problem with having the last documentation. And this is the main idea, to have the last documentation, and that's why they come the idea to retrieve, to crawl this information from Apple documentation. And that's why we'll deep dive to speak about, if you can qualify Cupertino in one sentence. You speak about the main problem, but there is a lot of tools that exist in Cupertino. But the main idea, if you can summarize this for the community.
Yeah. So it's a local MCP server that serves locally retrieved from the web, retrieved Apple documentation that tries to be as up to date as possible, and all of that documentation is saved locally for each user.
That's great. I think that at this moment you need to retrieve, to download this documentation and to be up to date. But there is some tips and tricks that we'll discover with Cupertino later about how it's work and how we retrieve data. I think the origin of the name Cupertino, maybe a lot of people know about this, but if you can speak about that.
Yeah, it's Apple's headquarters. And
Yes.
so it's like reminding, oh, this is where the documentation came from. Like it came from Apple's headquarters. And it's documenting all of their frameworks, meaning all of their devices, how their SDKs work, and how those frameworks work. Some frameworks are almost 30, 40 years old. So yeah, some are even before next step, inherited part. So that's why it's named Cupertino.
Yes. I think also that you build everything in Swift, because when we check, especially in last year, the majority of the MCP exists using TypeScript, JavaScript, etc. And there is a working made by Anthropic, because the model context protocol MCP, it's this idea that come from Anthropic and also adopted by the other LLMs to become like a standard from communication between LLMs and server, if we can say. But everything it's built in Swift, which is fantastic. And also you write everything homemade. You don't use what we call the MCP SDK, written by Anthropic, but every layers, even from the server and the client, it's written by you, which is fantastic. And what is the idea behind this? Why
Yeah,
you
the idea
choose?
was
Yes.
Yeah, the idea was I use what I know and I use what I love. If I would have used some JavaScript derivative like TypeScript, why would I do that? I don't use that JavaScript. I still think that JavaScript only belongs on a web page. I don't believe it belongs on the server or especially not in Electron. I don't like it. I don't like using it. It's not ergonomic. It's insulting to the user. And so I just, use my own dog food. This is what I use for every day. Why wouldn't I be able to write tools in Swift? I don't see no reason. It's not an issue for me that many people use JavaScript or Rust or Go. I don't care about that. I use what I love and I know. I don't have to be fashionable, And of course, it can be written in Swift. We got REPL, we got command line, we got everything we can install somewhere where it's in the path and it will be able to be used from your command line and everything. So why not use Swift? Yeah. And why
Mm.
would I use MCP someone wrote when it's such a small spec? Those small specs. Why do I need SDK for everything? I try not to use dependencies where I don't need to. I use many dependencies when I need to because they are great, managed by community. But this is really MCP is a small protocol, just new one. There's no need to use something. And how do I know it's like the best? Maybe mine is not great, but then someone will tell me. And yeah.
Okay, great. But all this need some knowledge, and I think about protocols behind MCP like gRPC, communication between client and server, and to understand this, I think that you have a lot experience about programming using Swift, like in backend or so, and in front
Yeah.
end, because it's not a knowledge to in Swift UI. It's a communication between server. It's like a distributed system, and in
Yeah,
distributed
yeah, yeah.
system we have client and server. If you didn't have knowledge about how we can communicate between client and server, and it's not be easy for everyone to do this, because Anthropic MCP try to abstract this to
Mhm.
developer. They give this API to developer to create MCP, but they didn't explain how things work behind the scene. You understand
Yeah,
me?
yeah. Yeah. But the thing is, it's a small protocol. It's new.
Yes.
So there's no need to not implement it. And I am very much focused on doing server and client. I do backend for test.
Mm.
So I very much utilize OpenAPI generator, which is a bundle of packages maintained by Apple as well. I even contributed to one OpenAPI kit because I'm very interested in that. And I always develop a mock server, which is
Mm.
a full server but without the database. So I sometimes even do some MySQL, a SQLite database in it. So I always kind of try to do both. And so this was not strange for me. And Swift UI is just one UI. You can do the same in UIKit and AppKit. You shouldn't be defined just by Swift UI. You should always have other options, in my opinion.
Okay, great. We'll begin with how to get started with Cupertino. What the minimum that we need to have to working with Cloud, because I think that now there is a lot of people using Cloud Code or Codex or Gemini CLI, etc. But I think 1 year before it's not very useful to use this. Not a lot of people use Cloud Code, etc., especially in daily developing. But how we can first of all install Cupertino, and if you can speak about this.
Yeah, the easiest way is to use brew tab.
Okay.
So that means like it's not in the main brew release, it's in a tab. Tab is like when you add yourself something, not the brew main distribution. So you can do brew tab, Mihaela MJ/tab. And then once you have it, it's in your brew. And then you can go brew install Cupertino and update and whatever. That's the easiest way. And whenever it updates, if you edit it to your brew, it will tell you, oh, this is updated. Or if you do like a brew upgrade, it will update Cupertino. And once you once you install Cupertino, it's really important that you do Cupertino setup. What it does,
Mm.
it downloads two databases from GitHub. One is for the documentation, which is a
Okay.
combined documentation of Apple documentation,
Okay.
Swift Proposals, Swift Book, Apple Archives, Apple HIG, and some packages that you chose. I'm thinking about adding maybe Swift Forums in the future. And the other database is a database of 600 plus Apple provided sample codes, also indexed. Both databases are SQLite and they use a full text search. My idea is for the next for the updates of Cupertino, which is in issues, to add a vector search. So there is a vector add-on for SQLite. So yeah, you download those two databases so you don't have to.
Yes, I think it's great. The communication between the server when you install, there is compared to other MCP server that they don't need this kind of setups because they don't need to download data or data from a server, etc. Like I don't know the kind of the SonarCube MCP or the Twist MCP or the Jira MCP, etc. Because they expose access to using token, something like that. There is no need to download. This is the specificity of Cupertino to download the documentation, different forms, and we'll speak about how you make this kind of crawling from using the W key web view after in our discussions. And maybe what is, to simplify to people that didn't have any understand of how MCP work, what is the role of the client? What is the client? The MCP client, and also the MCP server, to simplify.
So the MCP server in this case is Cupertino, and the client is AI coding tool or just AI chat, whatever. So Cupertino serves the documents from the MySQL databases, and the AI client asks for the questions. The interesting thing is this Cupertino works in two modes. One is MCP, where it serves MCP through I/O, and then it also works as command line the same way it works as MCP. So if for whatever reason you need the raw Cupertino output, you can just use Cupertino search in command line and it will spit out the same blob of text it would for the AI coding agent. Other interesting thing is there are some other Swift and Apple related MCPs, but they all use on demand. They download on demand documents from Apple documentation, and there's a problem with that because they only download the documents that are available in JSON format, and that's less than third of document. So that's why I use UK view, because sometimes you just can't get those JSONs. So Cupertino first tries to download the JSON. If it can't, then it let the web view render the page, and then it extracts it and converts it to the same structure of JSON, so that it has a uniform way to parse those documents into a SQLite database. So that's the difference. And also Cupertino doesn't only use Apple documentation. It also uses Swiftbook and proposals, which in my case are very important because they have some details that you don't get to have in documentation. Maybe some insights, but also the motivation of why the author even, to make such a proposal, which in my case, in my opinion, is very, very important to know why did someone do that. So that's why I really, really love the proposals.
And also the samples.
Sample code. Sample codes are in a different database, just because those might change at different times, and it's no need to, like, non-related data shouldn't be in the same place. And so it's 610 something Apple sample codes, and those are also available as full projects, but also they have indexes as full text search for symbol names, because there is like some AST symbolification in Cupertino, and also just the text search, and also they are tagged by iOS availability version for not only iOS, tvOS, Apple Watch, and stuff like that. So you have options in Cupertino to limit the results only by a specific version.
Okay, great. You speak about the server. From my cognition about the server, you offer what kind of tools also document and resource. The specificity of Cupertino, he offers tools, and also these tools try to retrieve information, crawling information from the documentation that it's converted to this special kind of SQL databases. All this, it's defined in the protocol. And we know that when we define it using a protocol, we should respect the protocols.
Mm.
It's very important because in the Anthropic MCP API created by Matt Thompson, they abstract all this. They offer tools, they offer resource, they offer all this three type of from the servers, and you from your side, you define all this in your code, and you offer tools, especially tools. I think there is number of 10 or more than 10 number of tools to search and documentation. We'll see that in the demo after. This knowledge about how things working, etc. It takes a time for you. Maybe you say that it's easy, but I think that takes to understand the protocol, how Anthropic do this, because after that you should respect the protocol, the MCP protocol. How you
Yeah.
If you can speak about this experience, how you take the time to, okay, this is how we offer tools, this how I will offer resource, etc.
Yeah, well, tools basically manipulate the data, whether by retrieving or searching the data or even making the database.
Yes.
And resources are just dumb data, some blobs of text, whether it's an example or a part of documentation or a proposal or something like that. So there are tools to search, to make the database, but then you can say that every type of search is also a tool. So even the options are part of tools. So you can limit the version number, you can limit the framework which you want. You can even go through sources, like you can just limit through sources. One source is Apple documentation, proposals, archives. Those are the old Apple documentations, and examples, one source. So tools just let you manipulate the data, retrieve it, and the resources are just the data.
Okay, great. It will be this question for people that didn't make this distinction about what kind of things can be sent by the server to the client. It's important to understand because a lot of people think that's only tools, but it's not only tools. There is other things. That's why I ask about this question. You said in the beginning of the discussion, about that it's local, and
Yes.
because there is another type which we called SSE communication, and the server is not. It's not in your machine. Generally, we don't need this kind of server that using what we called SSE communication or HTTP communication, and that's why you using what we call the STDIN and STDOUT communication between the client and the server. Why you didn't use to think about make Cupertino as HTTP or using socket HTTP MCP server?
Yeah, because you only use HTTP if you need to.
Yes.
It's a anti-pattern to use it for local things. And there are situations when you would use UDP, like for speech and video. You would never use HTTP, especially not HTTPS. So you only need web protocols when you are on a remote place, when you're serving from a remote place. Why would you use web when you're doing everything locally? That's an anti-pattern. You use it because you don't know better, or I don't see any other reason. So it's wrong to write a local tool and to go through some protocols that are made for remote communications.
I think I didn't understand this because there is a kind of some situation, especially for example, when you have kind of Jira MCP, you should have this kind of communication between the LLM that can upload information, send information about the users, have tokens, etc. This kind of information cannot be installed in
of course.
in the local. Yes, we understand
maybe
this.
In the intranet, but it needs the tokens and everything because it behaves the same whether it's in intranet or internet. They didn't change the logic. It would be too much work. Even maybe in ideal world they could.
Okay, I think that we can come to some practical thing about communication between the client and the server. Can you maybe share a little bit Cupertino that we can understand how we can, first of all, the code, the architecture of the project. It's very important to people that didn't download or clone or fork the project. I think that Mihaela would be happy if someone, other people, they can fork it and contribute to the project and give some new things that help the project to be improved. Can you please share the project that we
Yeah,
can
sure.
handle? Yes, thank you.
Okay, screen. Allow to share screen. Window. I guess, no, screen. Okay, I'm sharing. Yeah, sharing time. So as you can see, this is the source code for Cupertino. It looks kind of unusual because I use what I call extreme packaging. So there's at the top, there is a workspace, and this is actually the workspace that we opened because there
Okay.
are packages here and nothing else. Everything is inside the packages. So if you can see here, we have 4 executables. That's Cupertino, Cupertino TUI, which is a text user interface. It's
Okay.
not important now. This is mock AI agent for testing, and
Okay.
Cupertino REL, that's release tool that I use to push to brew and stuff like that. So
Okay.
as you can see, everything here is in those packages, and it's all if devs for designated targets. And all of these packages are team based, so anything that can be refactored is refactored. So
Okay.
let's see here for this is just MCP, so here is protocol for, and here is even the server part. And then where we use those, we use them, as you can see here, MCP client and MCP support. So we use it like everywhere. And as you can see here, there's a mock AI agent, and there are some release tool resources, search tool provider, and stuff like that. So as you can see, everything is in a package. And
Okay.
here you can see our executables. That's Cupertino release, Cupertino text user interface, and mock AI agent. So that's just in short
Mm.
how it looks. Yeah.
Okay, great. And for the if you for how, for example, if you can make a little test about communication between the client and the server using gRPC.
Yeah. So let's say here, if we have, let me see. Let's say if we try to search Cupertino search, this
Okay.
is from command line. If we do
Yes.
Cupertino search, source human interface guidelines, navigation. Let's see what we have. So we kind of have to wait for a while. We can make this bigger.
Okay.
And then it's now, and you can see a lot of text has been pasted. And this
Okay.
is exactly the text that the user AI agent sees. So maybe we can just paste it here and then see it in some. Doesn't matter. Maybe so. If you can see, there are a lot of answers here.
Okay.
And this is for navigation. So what the Cupertino does basically, it gives you when you just ask it a question and you ask it to ask like human interface guidelines. What it
Okay.
does, it basically gives you the answer, but then it gives a lot of tips. Why? Because when the MCP agent starts, it kind of makes a handshake with the tool. And that handshake is, this is what I have. This is what I can do. But the AI agent forgets that, and that's
Yes.
why you need to give it tips. So this is like maybe easier to read. So it's kind of like Markdown, but not really. So you can see like navigation and search, column views, and then you see like best practices, and then web views and best practices, and then you see. So it gives tips all the time, so
Okay.
that the AI agent remembers and so this is the most important part. So other sources. So once it kind of gives you what you asked for, it it gives the AI agent this. So also in Apple documentation here, also in sample code, also in Apple archive, and so on. So because the the AI agent is really forgetful, this I find to be very, very useful.
Okay.
And for us to kind of see how it works, maybe we can use this. So if we do something like this, okay, and now we run mock agent. And so you can see server started and request JSON. So it kind of starts. So what happened here? Where did we start? There's a lot of text here. Yeah. So where
You
was
have
it? Yeah. So, starting MCP server. So server started and waiting for initialization. Client server. So this is like the JSON initialized. Yes. Yes. And now is initialized response. So you can see now tools list. And now here you see like all of the tools that are there, and then it shows you the received JSON, and then here you can see tools list. So there are a lot of tools: search, list frameworks, read document, read samples, read sample one, read sample file, search symbols, search property wrappers, search concurrencies, search conformances. So this is how they kind of communicate.
Yes.
Initialize, the other said, okay, what do you have to offer? So here is basically what it has to offer. And then it says found tools, 10 tools, and it kind of shows you the tools and everything. And here is like, and now it's searching for Swift UI. And this is basically JSON RPC, the raw response. And then it says received the same one. So you can just do this by calling the mock agent. And so here is like resources list, and it will list all the resources which you can then receive. And this is just one error, which is great because it would have gone on and on. So the way I like to present it is on GitHub, because I really love how the GitHub works when it comes to reading markdowns. It's really great.
Right.
So this is, let me make this bigger. This is the way the documentation works in my case. So here we have documentation, and here we can go to the commands. And if you can see, each command has its own respectful folder. So cleanup, doctor. So if you want to know anything about command, you just come to that folder, and you see, oh, it has options. Okay, and here it's like these are the options, and now you can see each option. Oh, dry run, what does it do? So this way, if you want to call Cupertino, you can have this in one window and just look at all the commands, or let's say fetch, which is a downloading a Swift evolution proposal. And you here have option, and you see the type. And so this is not an option, this is the type. And then it says all archive availability. And as you can see, fetch type all, which means type is an option. That's why we have two minuses. And these are the parameters of a type. You see? And authenticate, as you can see, is another option. That's why we have minus minus. So I tried by this folder structure to make a self-documenting folder structure for people not to have to use help.
Okay.
So fetch, or let's say search. Search is the biggest one. And it has arguments and options. So we can see like query, Cupertino search. Okay, this is a query. That's the query you ask. Okay. But there's also an option. Oh, so many options. And so we have an option source. So source Apple archive, just like we had HIG before. Source Apple docs, source Apple sample code, and so on. And here we have like format. You can format text, JSON, and Markdown. Framework. This is this is a framework which is not the same as the source. Include archive, which means you can search but also include archive. And all of this language, you can here see Swift and Objective-C, min iOS. So here these are the options, min macOS and stuff like that. And then search the B, which is, if you move the database somewhere, for some example. And The serve command is not important because it kind of it gets called, let me see, Cupertino, and you go
Okay.
to the README file. This is the README file. And if you can see here, we have, this is just this. Yeah. So if you can see here, when you configuring Clock Desktop, you give it argument serve. So you never
Yes.
have to call Cupertino serve. This will call the serve on command. But if you don't want to, you can just use Cupertino with as a command line. So just use it as you would use any command on Linux or Unix. So yeah, this is the way I love to look at the documentation. You go into docs, and artifacts are just, folders that are there. So it kind of tells you what is in a folder. These are the folders that are saved on your in your Cupertino installation. So it's so here you can see all the folders, and then binaries. It kind of gives you those binaries. So those are then commands, which we just talk about, and then images. This is just one image, and then the tools: list framework, read sample. So you can see okay, so this is list framework. So this is just a tool that you can call Cupertino list framework. So instead of search, you use this, or Cupertino list samples. But that would mean all the samples and all the tools. So this is just for MCP to use. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to share in short.
Yes, it's great. I think you cover a lot of things related to Cupertino. It's great work about documentation, a lot of tools, how tools working, and also it's great that in documentation we understand how tools work.
Yeah, it's very important for me. I'm a visual person,
Mm.
and I many times rearrange things. I sometimes rename everything, and it takes me 2 days, but I have to kind of have it logical. And that's why I wanted the folders to completely mimic the usage of options and arguments and everything. I wanted to people to, where is it? Just look at the folders and it's there.
Yes, come now. We discover the search docs, the mocking AI agent in this demo, and maybe we'll be speak now about the crawler, how to retrieve information using what we call the W key web view, and also transform this to the SQL databases. Can you speak? I think the choice of using W key web view first of all, and after that this process of crawling, because the term it's not very used, crawling.
Yeah, basically Cupertino tries to go to Apple documentation and then read the front page, and then from the front page there are links to other sections, but those are not complete. I found some other links which are also documented in the code where you have to start from. Otherwise, if you just start from the beginning, you will not get all the documents. And I discovered it when I used attestation, and I didn't have some frameworks documented. And then I realized, like quite a few frameworks weren't there, like, I don't know, 10%. And so I added that one, but it was not intuitive. So Cupertino basically tries to work as any crawler does. It just recursively follows links. And the thing is that Apple tried to give their documentation via in a JSON format if you request it, but it's less than half. So what Cupertino does when crawling is this: it first tries that fetch, the JSON fetch. If it doesn't work, then it fires WebView. It waits for JavaScript to load, and then it reads the JavaScript and generates the same JSON Apple would have returned have they. So that way we are starting with the same data, but we have to wait for JavaScript to load. We have to wait after it loads, and then scrape the data. And then we can't really immediately go to another one. We have to have like half a second or something. And that's why it takes 12 hours or something to recrawl everything, because you never know what they updated. And for that reason, I added all the documentation to a separate GitHub repo where people can do with it whatever they want. It's just a raw JSON file for all the documents. And I also added all the Apple sample codes in another repo which also people can use. I'm not sure if Apple will maybe punish me, but I will remove it if they. I just wanted the community to know what's there because those are not mine.
Okay.
They're Apple's. And so anyone can do with it whatever they want. So I basically make two databases out of these two. The documents are saved as is, but then there are multiple times indexed over and over in a full text search 5. It's a version 5. So when you use SQLite, it's based like a C binary. And then these are additions. Full text search is one addition, vector is another addition. And so I just used low-level SQLite calls because those are small, simple, and there are only a few ones. You don't get too many SQLite commands. SQLite is very simple. You state at the table where to edit. You can vacuum it, which means delete all the empty space. You can, check the integrity and stuff like that. So it's a small library. SQLite is small, so attacking it directly worked the best. Because if I wanted to use some tool, it adds complexity and a layer of abstraction which I don't understand if I encounter a problem. But this is me attacking the SQLite directly, so I can understand it.
Okay, that's great. Now I think I have a question about what is your vision, idea about to improve Cupertino, maybe in search, etc. Because now we are in the first version of the project, but with 10 release. But we
10
also
release,
are,
but it's not version 1 yet. It's not
it's not
version
version 1,
1.
which really I appreciate because I see a lot of people make version 1, 2. This kind of semantic version for me, the first version, it will be the first version that we can, okay, this is production. I don't know how you can check if the number of people that use, I don't know, maybe you have.
No, I can't check.
I can't because
No.
it's a local MCP. That's why.
Yeah,
And
I
people,
can't check it, and I don't care. I am all for privacy. I don't need to know what anyone uses if they don't
like
use
in
it. If
skills,
they
for
took the
example.
code. No, this is I get so much value from open source project like Open API
Okay.
generator, and so if I can help one person, I'd be so thrilled if they had the same problem. And you know what I mean? Like we are developers. We don't. I'm a woman. I don't get to talk to my friends about these things. I
Okay.
just don't get to. And so whenever someone has the same problem as me, I'm so happy. And if I can help a person, I'm like ecstatic. I don't
Okay.
get to do that often. So people can shred my code. Do not attribute me. I don't care. Just as long as it's useful and as I know that I'm solving a problem, I will continue to do it anyway. So yeah. So the problem, the next version is a vector database for the documentation that we have and the sample code that we have. But I also have another idea in mind to maybe, but I'm not even sure that would be Cupertino. Maybe it's another project. And that would be to make a vector database in SQLite of your repo and give that to Claude. Then Claude doesn't have to do over and over again the same thing, and then forget. If it has a vector database, then it speaks its language, because vector databases speak the same dialect as
Okay.
AI LLM tools. They kind of use it as a last layer. It's a vector database. And then that's basically how they store the data internally. Just one layer of it, not all of it, of course. And that is like whenever you see a cat and a mouse, and if they're together, then they would be pretty close in a vector database. Then it can kind of suggest the next word and stuff. And if you would, but it's very redundant. So let's say you have 20 megabytes of code. It would be like 4 terabytes vector database of your code, but your Claude would be ecstatic. Oh my God, this is me. This is my language. I understand everything. It wouldn't have to do so much work and then forget context. My idea is to kind of not lose context because it wouldn't have to, because it would always walk those related things in your code that you're working with. It could always go to other related things. It doesn't have to cook everything and then make some kind of a context for itself, and then it loses the tokens. It have to do it all again. It would have its big context prepared in a vector database, and it could just look at the parts. So this is my idea. This is the hypothesis. So I will try it, but I first want to add vector database to Cupertino
Yes.
so that it can better search. I'm not sure if it's too useful, not useful. I don't know. Maybe it will let you stay in the same context for longer in
Okay.
Claude. Yeah. This way it
Yeah.
probably forgets something. That's why I have those tips. But this vectorizing your repo, yeah, I have to do it for myself. So if I find it useful, I'll open source it.
Okay, great. I think that we cover a lot of things related to Cupertino in this episode, and we come to the end of the podcast. It was really fantastic to discover the code, to discuss with you about how things worked behind the scene in Cupertino, and maybe to that people want to create this kind of MCP to be much more motivated to do this using maybe the Entrepig MCP API or make like you a homemade for the different layers in the client and also in the server. I don't know, Michaela, what do you want? I think that you have in the few days conference to speak about Cupertino. I see that's near LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Maybe about to speaking also about Cupertino. I
Yeah.
think that people will be there to discuss with you. I don't know. Maybe the episode will be before or after. I don't know about that. The time of editing this, and let you the last last sentence to speak about what is your project, Cupertino, and another thing to the community, and how people can follow you, especially in LinkedIn, your website, etc.
Yeah, well, my website is my name in reverse,
Yes.
Aleahim. It's Mihaela in reverse. I don't have a C name. It's not MIC, it's just MIH. So yeah, it's my
Okay.
Aleahim.com. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's basically it. I'm most active on LinkedIn and Mastodon and Blue Sky. I do have Twitter, but I have 7 followers. So
Okay.
it's basically that. And but LinkedIn is maybe nice because I do get many people who are also iOS developers there, which is surprising. I didn't expect it. And I will be presenting in Skopje in Macedonia
Okay.
about writing Cupertino as an example of we should write tools in Swift. Yeah. So
Okay.
that's it.
Great. Great. Thank you, Michaela, and see you soon. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.